She says it in the author's note, I think. And now I don't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. You have to stop skipping those.
Yeah, I guess so. I just have so many more books to read now.
I know. But we're talking like a few pages. Man up. Don't put that in there, actually. Please. Hello, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of Books I Make My Husband Read. I'm your host, Kristy, and this is my co-host, my husband, Jon, whom I make read the books.
What's up, everybody?
This week, we'll be discussing Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Just for the Summer is a contemporary adult romance novel that follows Justin and Emma, two people who suffer from the same problem. Every time they date someone, their exes find their soulmates immediately after their breakup.
Yep. This was a good one. Our first rom-com, and I'm excited to talk about this one. So before we get into all that, let's share what our upcoming books are going to be for the next episode. Episode 1? We usually have 2, but there's only 1 listed.
I know, I'm pulling a plot twist on you.
Oh, shit. Okay, well, the one listed is The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich, and drum roll.
And then the next book is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli.
I don't approve this choice.
It's the witches one. I told you about it.
Oh, the witches one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They're killing all the witches, even if you are one. Is it killing or they're rounding up? Or I don't know what the line is, but if you know, you know. All right. So yeah, that's a plot twist, but I think you're really going to like it. I finished it yesterday and you were actually in the room when I finished it, and it was when I went,
oh, and I asked if you were okay. Yeah, okay.
Yes, and I was not okay. All right, so remember that you can keep up with the books that we'll be talking about next by following us on Instagram at Books I Make My Husband Read.
Yep. We've got some feedback, and one of the pieces of feedback was switching up our fact-checking section to more of like a listener engagement, listener questions that we've been getting. So wanted to share a couple that we've had over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and last week we did answer one of those listener questions, but I failed to mention who it was, so I wanted to give that listener a shout out. Thanks to Christine in Indiana for submitting your question about if I finish books or not, if I have any on my DNF list. And for this week, we have a question from Mike in Wisconsin. Mike wants to know if our podcast is scripted because our banter sounds so authentic. Well, thank you, Mike. You can't fake this hot mess, I swear.
No.
But to answer your question, the conversation between Jon and I is not scripted. I do write out the book summary in our opening just to make sure there's nothing that we miss. We want to make sure that we talk about the book we're going to be covering, about the books that we're going to be covering next, and sometimes in our hilariousness, we might forget to do that. So I write out the few things that we want to make sure we cover, but everything that after that is authentic.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a good thing you do. Otherwise, there would be a lot of dead air on this podcast because when I'm asked a direct question, my brain often goes blank and I don't exactly know how to answer it right away. So it's good to be a little prepared.
Yes.
Cool. So one other question we can throw into this section is from, let me see, Kennedy in Michigan. She actually asked on our Instagram, besides reading, what is something you like to do for fun?
Yeah, so thank you for this question, Kennedy. I know that I gave you a partial answer on Instagram, which was that during the fall, Jon and I spend a lot of time sometimes at football games, but we spend a lot of time on the weekends watching football games. I went to the University of Michigan for grad school and grew up a huge Wolverine fan, so go blue. Jon is I'm
a fan by proxy.
Married into this mess, and he loves it.
I do.
And then I grew up in Michigan, and I am a big Detroit Lions fan.
And you're probably only really proud to say that now in the last couple of years that they've been good. Otherwise, you might hide that.
It's not that I wasn't proud before. That's not actually true. It's just that I knew what to expect.
You were a realist.
I was a realist. I had hope. I always had hope, but I didn't put a lot of stock in it. This year, though, I'm all in.
Yep. I think the entire state of Michigan is in.
We also love sports in general. We go to a lot of sporting events. We are a fan of the arts, so we go to theater, and We like games. We play a lot of cribbage. We play Pinochle when we're with my parents, which is a game that I love. And I make, that's another thing I make John do.
It's true, you did.
Card games I make my husband play.
That podcast would be one episode.
It took a lot of convincing to get you to play Pinochle. That was a pandemic victory for me.
Yeah, that's true. I like it now.
Yeah. It's a thinking game. And we like trivia.
Yes, we do like trivia. Every Thursday night at a local pub near us, there is a trivia that we try to attend every week. So it's a fun little thing to do, to meet up with friends and just get out of the house for a bit.
Yes. Thank you for the question, Kennedy.
Yeah, thanks. And keep them coming. For anyone listening, you can always email us any questions, and chances are we'll answer them. Send us an email at booksimake.myhusbandread@gmail.com, or you can comment on one of our Instagram posts, or you can slide into our DMs like our characters in this upcoming book. As with every episode, this will contain spoilers, but we'll let you know in advance before we spill any of the tea into the harbor.
Also, before we start off with the summary, we did want to give a quick content note on this episode. While this book is a romantic comedy and it is quite hilarious, it does cover topics that can be triggering for some people. This includes panic attacks, anxiety, PTSD, and depression. It also depicts characters with undiagnosed mental health issues, a toxic mother figure, and child neglect. We will be discussing some of these topics during this episode.
Yeah, and if you or anyone you know is suffering from mental health disorders, know that it's okay to not be okay. Always seek the advice of your mental professional, your mental health provider regarding any questions or concerns you might have about your own specific health needs. We'll list a handful of resources in the show notes as well.
Yes, please ask for help if you need it. The author has a content warning in the beginning of the book, and we thought it was important to include it here as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's give the book summary. Justin is a 29-year-old engineer with a curse, and thanks to a Reddit thread entitled, "Am I the Asshole?" his curse is all over the internet. Every woman Justin dates goes on to find their soulmate the second they break up. Emma is a 28-year-old traveling nurse with the same problem. Every man she dates marries the next person he meets after their breakup.
And Emma happens to find this Reddit thread, and she decides to slide into Justin's DMs at the insistence of her best friend and fellow nurse, Maddie. Justin and Emma come up with a plan. They'll date each other and then break up. Their curses will cancel each other out, and they'll both go on to find their loves of their lives, their soulmates. They agree to go on 4 dates, 1 kiss, and a breakup. Sounds like a perfect plan.
Yes. And in true rom-com fashion, their plan goes awry when they begin to develop real feelings for each other. Who saw that coming?
Not me. It was only the first note that I took after when I was reading it. Yeah, and there are a couple other twists in the book as well. Emma's toxic mother shows up. Justin has to assume guardianship of his 3 younger siblings, and they suddenly have to navigate a lot more than expected.
Yes. All right, now anything beyond this point will contain spoilers, and this is your final warning to exit if you do not like spoilers. And if you don't care about the spoilers, please continue to listen. All right, let's talk about what we rated this book. And I think I went first last time.
Yep, you did. I gave it 5 stars, mainly because the dialogue was hilarious. It was really the best part of the book. But I also think I realized why you wanted me to read this one. It has a lot of similarities to the early parts of our relationship, I felt like. Starting off having only phone conversations.
I was like, it does?
There's like a great distance between us. There was like this feeling that there was nothing really to lose by giving it a shot and seeing what happens. And
that's very true.
We're just kind of laying it all out there. And I felt like both of them were doing that through this book as well. So there's a lot there.
So in another plot twist, I gave this book 4 stars. I read it when it very first came out earlier this year, and I read it again to prepare for this episode. And I almost felt like I wanted to change it to 5, but I didn't because I was true to what I rated it the first time. And I'll tell you why. This book is over 400 pages long, and the epilogue is 2 pages. That was a bummer. And Emma has, as we mentioned, some serious mental health problems that she's working through. And we spend 380 plus pages or whatever it is. I'm not going to look exactly up where she's dealing with that. And then we fast forward 6 months later, and then she's ready to go back to Justin. And we get this short chapter on it where we hear everything that happened in the last 6 months. And I think that mental health is just such an important topic. And I don't want people to say that I don't think Abby Jimenez did it justice, because I think anytime you can make the prevalence of mental health aware is so important. Like you said, it's okay to not be okay, and more people need to hear that. But I just would have liked to hear more about Emma's journey. And then I just don't feel like I got enough of like what happened after, because it was like, okay, yep, she's going to stay this time, but there's going to be a lot of things that happen that make it difficult for her to stay. I don't know. I felt like I wanted more as a reader than like the 2-page epilogue. And then also the other thing that I just felt like there was like a slight contradiction. So the whole premise of the book is that they're going to enter this curse breaking plot together so that they can find their true loves, but yet Emma doesn't want to get attached to anything. So why does she actually like want to break this curse when she doesn't want to be attached to someone?
I had that in my notes too when I was reading it. I had the same thought actually.
So that's why I rate it 4. I would say obviously based on the way it's rated, it's somewhere between 4 and 5. It's an amazing book. If you like rom-coms, you should 100% read it. It is hilarious. You're not wrong about the dialogue. And in fact, I talked about this a couple episodes ago that I had seen Abby Jimenez speak here at a book convention. And she talked about her first try at writing was this young adult novel that she says will never see the light of day. She said because it was terrible, but there's a site where you can essentially like put your work up and other people can read it. And she said she got consistent feedback that her dialogue was really good. So she said she just really leaned into that, and it comes across. I mean, it's hilarious. You thought it was hilarious. And it's very much the same in all of her books. Like the characters are just relatable, and they say things that are relatable, and you can hear yourself saying things like that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into some of these questions. First, the book is told from 2 different perspectives, both Emma's and Justin's. And in Emma's opening scene, she and Maddie are looking at Justin's Instagram, and Maddie points out that Justin has a bed frame in his room. This leads to a conversation about men and that bed frames are green flags. Maddie says, the closer to the floor the bed is, the worst kind of humans they are. I 100% think this checks out. And I know that you, thankfully, had a bed frame and a headboard when we met.
I did.
So I was wondering, are there things that maybe men talk about in regards to women that they're like, oh, that's a red flag or that's a green flag? You're not aware of them?
I mean, no, probably, but I feel like stereotypically, I think the bar tends to be pretty low for men when it comes to that. We tend to not find things out until it's quote unquote too late. Or for all the How I Met Your Mother fans out there, maybe we refer to like Barney's hot to crazy scale, and they have to fall in somewhere in that.
I agree with the hot to crazy scale.
There is some truth to it. For sure.
If you don't know what that is, please Google it. I'm sure you can find it. It's quite hilarious.
It is hilarious. But it's a good question. I would actually like to pose that to anyone listening, to any of the men listening to this podcast. Help me out here. Throw me a bone. Shoot us an email and let us know if there are any things that we look for in this crazy world called love.
All right. So for those of you who didn't read the book, Emma and Maddie are traveling nurses. So every 3 months, they move to a new state for work. So if you had a job where you got to choose a new city every 3 months, what would your top 3 destinations be? And we'll say the United States.
Yeah. Okay. I figured it was going to be in the United States. This is kind of funny because I feel like I do kind of have a job that we could travel to a new city every 3 months if that was the lifestyle that we chose.
We definitely could. We both have jobs like that.
100%. We did talk about it a number of years ago, though. We kind of laid it out. What could that life look like?
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the question. In no particular order, my brain first goes to someplace tropical like Maui or Honolulu or someplace like that in Hawaii. Then somewhere in the mountains, maybe Aspen or Boulder or something like that. Maybe I also don't think you can go wrong with like San Diego or Santa Monica or somewhere in Southern California. I think those would kind of be my top 3. What about you?
I put New York City because I just love New York City. But I guess that maybe I should be thinking of places I wouldn't want to live like for long term. I would only want to live for a certain period of time. So for instance, I would pick a city in Hawaii. I don't know which island I would want to be on. I would probably need to do a little bit more research if I was going to live there for 3 months. Yeah. But I also think I would get island fever. So I don't think I would want to live there long term, but I think I could handle it for 3 months. I also would love to live in a, like you said, Aspen, but like a sleepy little ski town, even though I don't ski, but I could sit and like read books and look out the mountains all day. That would be amazing. Totally. So maybe like Telluride.
Oh yeah.
Or someplace like that.
Yeah, good one.
That's not as
touristy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's another place like I couldn't live long term. Like I need the city. I need amenities. Yeah. That's not for me. And then I guess if I had to pick another one, maybe like a Portland, like someplace I haven't been that I would like to experience and travel and do more than just visit there and just really experience like the culture of the city.
Yeah, I almost put one of those too, like Northeast or Northwest, Nantucket or Portland. Ooh,
yeah, Nantucket's a great.
Something like that by the sea where it's just like, kind of live the sea life for a short period of time.
I almost sang the Pirate's Life for Me song right there.
My head the rest of the episode.
I think that's what.
Arr.
You're welcome. Okay. Justin sends Emma surveys before their date to gauge her interest and plan, as well as an exit interview. What are your thoughts on this? Hot or not?
Okay, so I had to go back and look at my notes because I started answering this question and then I realized that I had put in my notes, hilarious given the terms of their agreement, but would it be creepy if the agreement didn't exist?
Oh, if you just check your email, there's a survey for you.
Yeah, totally. Like, you know, you're on Tinder or something, you're setting up this date and all of a sudden you get this random survey.
That would be creepy.
So I think context plays a big part in my answer.
Matters.
Context 100% matters. In the context of the book, though, or just maybe in general, I would say no. It's lighthearted and fun. I think it's creative. It kind of shows his personality. I thought the post-date surveys were great. They're hilarious. I mean, that's really valuable information to know, especially on like early dates. Like, was this a 4 or 5 star date? Like, I gotta know. Anyway,
I mean, it might like alleviate a lot of dating pressure if you got an exit survey. Oh my gosh, like can you imagine if there was an app where you like rated people?
It's called Facebook.
No, but like you gave like I had a 5-star date with John. He did this. He showed up on time. He called me the next day or he texted me afterward. Would recommend.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Like too short for me, but would recommend.
Yes.
It sounds like lawsuits waiting. I don't
exactly
know.
What I was just
it sounds like a bad idea, but
it's hilarious.
It would. I think it would do wonders for, women especially, and probably stay away from this guy.
Yeah. So to close the loop on that, I think it was fun. Definitely you got to know your audience though.
All right. So I was sitting next to you on our way to New York City, and you were listening to the book, and you were laughing a lot.
I was.
So Abby Jimenez's writing style is known for its heart and its humor, and this book really is laugh out loud funny. But what were some of the moments in the book that made you laugh or cry or that you felt deeply moved by?
I mean, there's too many to list. Pretty much every other page. Almost any quip from Maddie I found absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, Maddie is hilarious.
Yes, she was hilarious. I liked her character a lot.
She's hilarious and just like a strong, opinionated woman. And when she meets Doug at the end and he's like, she scares the hell out of me. I like love her or something. I was like, that's what probably John thinks of me.
I'd be lying if I said there haven't been moments where I've thought that to myself. This is true. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I think what I found most for me was just the dialogue throughout the whole book just felt so natural, and it made me yearn for friendships like that almost, where you could just have this kind of hilarious banter, and it just felt very organic. And so, yeah, it was really the whole book I felt really funny. What about you? What parts did you stood out to you?
I agree with you. There's just a lot of moments that are wonderful, but one of my favorite ones is I knew it was coming too. Like as soon as the scene hit, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. When I reread it, but when they pick up Justin's mom,
oh my God,
and her friend. Okay, so they pick up. So Justin's mom is Christine, and her best friend is Lee. So it's the night before she's supposed to go to prison, and her best friend Lee go out and they get drunk, and so they're banned. They say they're banned from Lyft and Uber, and they have to go, and then they call Justin, and he has to go pick him up, and he's on a date with Emma. Now Emma has said, "I don't want to meet your family at this point," but she's like, "Yeah, if you have to go, you have to go." So they're in the car, they're saying all these crazy things, and Justin tries to get to drink them some water. And Lee says, "Water? That stuff that killed everyone on the Titanic?" I just died. And then they find out that
the raccoons.
That they have raccoons with them that they saved. Yes. Them. And Justin's like, "What if they have fleas?" And Lee's like, "We washed them in the sink at Circle K. This one's George Clooney."
George Clooney. I had to pause the book at that point because I was laughing so hard too. That whole scene in the car. You could just picture it. It was just so, hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. It
was hilarious. Lee and Christine are, together they're hilarious, but that was probably my favorite scene. All right, next question. Emma tells Justin, in a world where you can choose anger or empathy, always choose empathy. And this becomes a common phrase and even sort of a mantra within the book. And as you know, this is something that I have struggled with, and I have gotten better, which you had a huge part in. But we do see Emma take this to the extreme throughout most of her relationship with her mom. Why do you think it was so hard for her to show empathy for herself, though?
Great question. I think that self-love and self-care was never really modeled for her growing up. She didn't know how to do it. It was all about survival for her during her childhood. But she had like a natural sense of empathy that she just knew she had. And I think she just it was easier for her to fill that space by pouring that into other people than it was herself. I also think it's just really hard to take your own advice.
Yeah.
And so it was easier for her to exercise those things with other people than within herself. It's just really hard to retain perspective and objectivity when you have competing feelings in your own emotions and sense of self-protection going on in moments like that. So it's hard. That's why we have such a mental health crisis in the world right now. It's just hard to do that.
Yeah. On those same lines, Emma describes her coping mechanism of not letting anyone on her island except Maddie and her mom. So what do you think the impact she has of narrowing the circle to two people who are pulling her in opposite directions? And then overall, what do you think that effect has on her mental health?
Yeah. Emma getting small, that whole piece of her I could relate to a lot. Often occurs after a fight or a conflict. You kind of reduce into yourself. You don't want to talk to anyone. You don't want to see anyone. You're just in your own mind. I could relate to this a lot. To answer your first question, the narrowing of the circle, it's a lonely place to be, but it's also can be oddly comforting in a way because you feel like you have more control when you put yourself in that space. Even though it can often be like a false sense of control, you still feel like you reduce the number of variables in your life to the simplest form where it's just like, I feel safe. I feel in control of myself, and pulling the opposite directions. That's a tough place to be because you have someone who is your biological mother who she has a natural affection for, but then you have her best friend and foster sister really has her best interest in mind. And with those two things competing, it can be a really challenging place to know right from wrong. What effect do I think it has on her mental health? And we're social beings, right? Isolation is not healthy
for long
periods of time. The whole dynamic with Amber, this is going to sound maybe a little off topic, but hear me out.
Okay.
I had put it in my notes. There was a scene from the movie Seven, way back from 1995, where Morgan Freeman's character, Somerset, is having a conversation at a bar with Brad Pitt. And he goes into this monologue about how apathy is a solution, that it's easier to lose yourself in drugs than it is to cope with life, easier to steal what you want than it is to earn it, or it's easier to beat a child than it is to raise it. He's like, love costs, it takes effort and work. That's kind of the two different paths I see a little bit here. It's like Amber chose to not do the work. She chose the easier path to lose herself, to take what she wanted, to neglect her child, and then to raise it. Where Maddie, and to Emma's credit, she realizes that like she takes the path of doing the work, and I think that's the difference.
I actually think though, until the end of the book, Emma doesn't do the work.
Yeah. I agree.
She is doing the same thing. Like what was modeled for her, but she is not doing the work to address like her mental health issues, which Maddie has brought up to her, but she is trying to stay alone on the island. She's not inviting people there because it is safer. It is harder to let people in. It is harder to break down your walls and show people your true self.
100%.
But at the end of the day, if you are limiting yourself to one or two people on an island, or no one, in some people's cases on an island, you're also limiting the support you have for what you need, whether that's mental health. It doesn't necessarily even need to be mental health. It could be anything.
Yeah, totally agree.
So speaking of islands, the rental house that they have, and also we haven't said this, but they're in Minnetonka,
some random place in Minnesota.
Lake Minnetonka. Yes. In Minnesota. They're renting a cabin there, and this cabin is on an island. So how do you feel the cabin or their home being on an island? How do you feel like that complicated the story? And then do you feel like the rental house being on an island was symbolic of something?
Yeah, 100%. It was symbolic. It was a physical manifestation of her emotional island, right? Like it was difficult to get to and from the mainland. It was challenging. And I was affirmed in that thinking the day that Justin came to save her when she was sick, and he came on that inflatable unicorn and paddled all the way to the island. During that scene, she realized that he was now on her emotional island too. And that was just kind of like the piece that affirmed it for me, that it was intentional by making their rental house an island and calling her emotional state like her little island also.
I think Emma is the island. The island is representing Emma because at most of the book, only Emma and Maddie are ever on the island. Her mom, who comes and stays on the mainland, I guess, never comes to the island, although that she's been there for weeks and weeks. And then Justin has to work really, really hard. And he takes a pool floaty that is in the shape of a unicorn and he paddles out there. So he has to work really hard to get there. And like you said, she realizes that she feels also like he's on the island too, and she's safe with him. So something that we had fun with last episode, and I wanted to do it again with this episode. I don't think we'll do this with every book, but if this book was being adapted into film or television, who would you cast as the main characters? And you can just do Justin and Emma if you want.
So this was definitely a little bit harder. I think it was harder because their ages are younger than when we did it for the Frozen River, when the characters were a little bit older. I felt like I had to dig a little bit deeper for this one. And I also wanted to find actors that maybe weren't as well known. But
then our listeners aren't going to know them.
I know, but that's okay. We're going to put them in the show notes. They can look them up, and like, here's how I envisioned these characters. So the first one, the first actress for Emma, I'll start with Emma, is Odaya Rush. She was in Lady Bird back in 2017. Don't even know who she is. I know. You're not going to know any of these people. That's okay. But I think they'd be great cast. If I was casting for film or TV, this is who I would pick. Second possibility is Madison Davenport. She was in Sharp Objects. Her character was Ashley Wheeler. And
do you even know these people? You even watch Sharp Objects?
Not personally, no. I know you wouldn't let me because we can only watch so many shows at once.
I wouldn't let you. That's not even true.
We can only have one drama show at a time.
I have a completion problem.
I know we did cover that last episode. That's true. All right,
not
I'll
my
move on
fault.
to Justin. Tom Holland, I think, could play a great Justin.
No.
No? Why not?
One, he's not good looking enough. And two, he's too short. Sorry, Tom Holland. I actually think you're amazing. You are Spider-Man. No, you're lame.
Ouch. Ow, that's rough. Another random one I thought for Justin was maybe like, could Harry Styles play Justin?
Okay. I actually slightly considered Harry Styles, but
No?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, since you shot down all my options, what do you got?
I think, and this is the correct answer,
Of course you would say that.
I think that Justin should be played by Glenn Powell.
Okay, that's a great one. Oh, shit.
Thank
I'll give
you.
that one. God damn it.
Thank you. I had this epiphany halfway through the second reread, knowing I was going to ask you this question because we had just done it for the Frozen River. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, Glenn Powell is Justin. And then I could not stop thinking about him being Justin throughout the rest of the book.
That's fair. All right, you win this casting call. Those were great options.
I don't know
tied
yours.
1-1.
I will look up yours and report back to you.
Fair enough. All right. Follow-up episode.
Yes. All right. So this is a little more of a meaty question, but how do you feel like you would have reacted if you've learned that you had a secret family that your parents hid from you like Emma's did?
That whole part of the book, one, felt really rushed for me. It was like first the DNA test and then have the siblings. And then you're talking to that sibling on the phone and then they're going to go meet up that day. Nope. Oh, you're right around the corner? Sure. We're only an hour away. Let's go. No way. There's just so much emotional, mental whirlwind.
Yeah.
There's just no way I would have headspace for that, which, I mean, obviously Emma didn't either, because that was the part, like you just said, that really opened the floodgates and she closed off everyone from that trigger. Yeah, what about you? Like, what would your reaction be?
I would have a lot of questions.
That checks out.
If I found out, I would be like, okay, here's my list. When did this happen? Like, who are these? Like, how? I mean, you read about these things in the newspaper, magazines, that so-and-so had this secret family that, the other wife or whatever didn't know about. And I just think it's crazy. One, because how do you not know?
Yeah. It is mind-boggling to think how some of those things can just totally pass over some people.
Yeah.
But I think we have a hard time relating to being able to empathize with people like that because their worlds tend to be very different from ours.
Yeah. And to be fair, we grew up in a 2-parent household where our parents are still married.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Most rom-coms that I read, or all of them, I think maybe, they end with the main characters ending up together. But there were several points in this book when I actually wasn't sure that Justin and Emma were going to be together. So were you rooting for them? And then was there any point when you actually changed your mind about the possibility of them being together and then if they should be together?
Okay, I'm really glad that you said that because I thought it was just like me not being a reader and not reading a lot of books where I was like, are they really not going to get together? This is a freaking rom-com. They're supposed to end with a happy ending. Yeah, I was rooting for them 100% through the book. I'm not surprised. I'm actually really glad that the author wrote this part in. I know you teed off the episode with like this being part of the reason why you gave it 4 stars, but I'm glad that she chose to leave Justin at that point in the book. That, we've talked about this, like there's no way you can healthily love someone else until you properly learn to love yourself. And I mean, shit, you and I have been through that. How much baggage I brought into this from my past marriage that I didn't realize I still had, and how that busted my confidence, tore me down. I like to put on a show, kind of like what Justin did in front of her in the beginning, but he also had all this other shit going on around him in his life and in his chaos. And I'm glad that she chose to leave. I think it's important. So I definitely hear you in regards to, it felt at the end of the book that all of a sudden, poof, 6 months is gone. And
what
she's,
do you need? Poof, what do you need?
That was great reference. That suddenly she's like going back to Justin. But I think it's important to remember that everyone's mental health journey is unique to them. And it may have felt rushed into books, but maybe 6 months to her was what she needed. She was already a fairly stable person. To me, it didn't feel unrealistic that 6 months later she could be revisiting and like dipping her toe back into that water.
I don't think it's the length of time. It's not the 6 months. I would agree with you on that. It's that we see her struggle for 380 pages, whatever I'm estimating here. And then for 20 pages, then we hear about the 6 months in her life. And we only get a small sampling of what went on during those 6 months. And I just think that there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And that's more where I don't want to say struggle. Like that's for me. I would just wish I would have gotten more. And then the other thing, I think Justin needs to go to therapy. He 100%. Has unresolved issues from his dad, from his mother. And now he's thrust into this extremely stressful situation where he has guardianship over 3 children.
Yeah, life altering.
Right, exactly. When he was, living in a 1-bedroom apartment by himself as a single person. And now he is in this like committed relationship. He has guardianship over his 3 siblings. His father has recently passed away, which is one of the most stressful things that anyone goes through in their entire life when you lose a parent. And then his mother's in jail. I imagine it's also on the stress scale. So I think that there was maybe a missed opportunity there, not talking about Justin's own
struggles.
Yeah, struggles. Thank you. And some things that he needs to work out too. But was there a point where you thought maybe they shouldn't be together? Maybe they are better off without each other?
No.
Or are you like, I read this book. These freaking people better go the distance.
Yeah, I thought they should be together. I think they complemented each other really well. They seemingly made each other better versions of themselves when they were with each other. And that's an important piece of any partnership.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I was not rooting for them. I certainly was, because like you, they end up together. Of course they end up together. But there was a point in the book where I thought, oh my God, they are actually not going to end up together. And
same.
I think I would have understood. I don't think I would have been happy or sad about it, but I would have understood. It's kind of like for me at the end of Hunger Games, I'm a team Gale, but I understood why she ended up with PETA.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about one of my favorite texts of the book. And when I read this book the first time, I remember telling you about this specific scene because it reminded me of our relationship. Then also very recently, 2 of our good friends got married, and the officiant actually read this passage from the book. And I remember like shaking your arm during the ceremony and be like, this is it. Like, this is the one I was telling you about. I'm whispering it. And so I'm going to just read it exactly how it is. The love story sold us the wrong thing. The best kind of love doesn't happen on moonlit walks and romantic vacations. It happens in between the folds of everyday life. It's not grand gestures that show you how you feel. It's all the little secret things that you do to make her life better that you never tell her about. Taking the end piece of bread at breakfast so she can have the last middle piece for her sandwich when you pack her lunch. And then he goes on to talk about a bunch of things. But I remember telling you something you don't know, or you do now because I told you, but you never knew for the first, 13 years of our relationship, is when I plate our food, I always give you the plate that looks better because I know you're going to take a picture of it and send it to people, but also because I want you to have the nicer version of it, because that's like me showing love to you.
Yeah, that quote is definitely in all the details. Love takes effort and it takes work, and it's those little moments that are the effort and the work, and it's what makes the difference in a, what adjective am I trying to put here? Sensational relationship versus an average relationship.
Yeah. It's like you were saying from that scene in 7, it's easier to ignore the things. It's easier to not put the work in. Or I don't remember exactly, but it's no different than relationships. It's hard to let your partner know that you care about them and then show them in ways that
life gets in the way, but you have to still make the time to show those little things. Otherwise you lose them.
Do you have any final thoughts on the book? Would you recommend this book to our listeners?
I would definitely recommend it. It was a nice reprieve from some of the heavier topics of the last couple of books, like If We Were Villains and that sort of thing. It was a nice respite from that.
No one got murdered.
No one got murdered. I mean, even though there were heavy topics in this, like we've talked about, the overall book was super light and pithy, and again, the dialogue
A lot of laughing.
Just fantastic. It was a lot of laughing, and it felt good. It was a nice mixture. What about you? What are your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely agree. I would absolutely recommend it. I mean, I would recommend to you that you should read the other two in the series too, or any Abby Jimenez books. I think you would love them. She is hilarious. And all of her books are like that. The dialogue is just stellar. All right. Well, then with that, we wanted to remind everyone that the next two books in our lineup are The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich and Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. And as always, don't forget that a free way to support our show is by leaving us a review and rating us on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't want to rate us, but you have a question or you have feedback on the show, you can email us at booksimake.my-husband-read@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's it.
That's it.
That's all I got.
One in the books.
Ding, ding, ding. All right. Well, who knows? Maybe this will be the one your husband reads.
He should.
Because it's laugh out loud funny.
It is laugh out loud funny.
I love you.
Love you too, honey bear.
Bye-bye.